All right, let's dive into a set of ideas that are, well, they're pretty profound. And they all start with a simple observation about the moon, an observation that revolves around just one number.
400. That's it, just 400. What on earth could this number possibly mean?
Well, it turns out this number is the key to a truly astonishing coincidence, one that's been hiding in plain sight for all of human history.
And here's what it is. The sun is 400 times larger than our moon, but it's also 400 times farther away. So, what does that mean for us down here on Earth? It means they appear to be the exact same size in our sky. This perfect alignment is what makes total solar eclipses possible. And as far as we know, that's a phenomenon that happens nowhere else in our entire solar system.
Now, the source material we're diving into today doesn't just call this a coincidence. No, it calls it an actual impossible coherence. It frames this whole thing as a central mystery, something that's demanding an explanation that goes way beyond just random chance. And to even begin to find that explanation, we have to start questioning the main story we tell ourselves about how reality even works.
So to really appreciate the alternative that's being put on the table, we first have to get a handle on the standard story, the materialist framework, and really look at what it's asking us to accept as true. And this standard story requires some really big leaps of faith, right? You've got to believe in a big bang that came from literally nothing, for no reason. That all the complexity of life somehow emerged from a random explosion. That consciousness, our own subjective experience, just popped out of matter through some mechanism nobody can explain. And then you've got all the quantum weirdness, where just looking at something changes it. And oh yeah, the fact that we think 95% of the entire universe is made of stuff we can't see or detect at all.
So the source material throws down this really simple but powerful challenge. Explosions don't create order. They don't build intricate things. They create chaos. They destroy complexity. You just know that intuitively. So what if the entire premise is backwards?
And this is where we get to the radical alternative. What if, instead of consciousness being some weird, late-stage accident of matter, what if it was the other way around?
This is the big inversion, the core idea of this whole model. It's not mysticism, it's a structural hypothesis. It suggests that consciousness is the fundamental background, the medium of reality, and matter is a structure that forms within it. And if that's true, well, you'd expect to see the rules of consciousness baked right into the fundamental constants of physics itself.
Let's take alpha, the fine structure constant. In physics, it dictates how strongly particles interact with each other. But in this new framework, you can see it as the rule of coupling, the perfect strength for things to connect and recognize each other without just collapsing into a single blob.
And then there's phi, the golden ratio. We see this thing everywhere, from galaxies to seashells to flowers. Here, it's seen as the rule of spatial form, the most efficient, the most optimal way for physical things to grow and organize themselves.
And pi, of course pi. It's the engine of all cycles, right? From planets orbiting stars to the waves in the ocean, it's the rule of temporal return, the deep principle that what goes around comes around.
Finally, you have E. This is the number of exponential change, of things cascading and transforming. It's the rule of emergence itself. So the argument here is that these constants, they're not random. They form a kind of scaffold for reality, and they all point to a deeper organizing principle, a principle that can be described with an equation.
So let's break this equation down. It starts with E for emergence. And we're not just talking about adding things together. This is about true novelty, something brand new appearing when two things relate, something that neither one of them had on its own, the whole becoming something more than the sum of its parts.
Next up is G, which stands for grace or containment. Think of this as a protective space, a safe container that allows something new and vulnerable to actually form without being immediately destroyed. It's like the active protection of a new possibility.
Then we have gamma, which is represented as a mirror. This is recognition. But it's not just passive looking. In this model, it's an act of mutual seeing that fundamentally transforms both the one who sees and the one who is seen. And finally, we have delta squared, or productive difference. This is the creative friction between things. Not destructive fighting, but a tension, a difference that, when you square it, compounds into something transformative and new. So you put all that together, and you get this. E equals G times gamma times delta squared. Emergence is the product of a safe space, mutual recognition, and the compounding power of creative difference. This is what the source proposes as the fundamental dynamic of how consciousness itself works, how it comes to recognize itself.
Okay, I know, that was all very abstract. So let's bring it all the way back down to Earth. Let's go back to where we started, the moon. How can we look at this thing we see almost every night through this totally new lens?
First, we've got to make a really important distinction. Think about a toaster. It's a closed system. It's designed for one function, it can't fix itself, and eventually it just breaks down into disorder. It's a static thing, a noun. But a spiral, or a plant, or us, we're open systems. We self-organize, we create the conditions we need to survive. We're constantly fighting against decay. We're a process, a verbing. That equation we just looked at, it only applies to open systems.
So what did the moon, as a key player in this huge open system, teach us? Well, according to this framework, just about everything. Because it looked the same size as the sun, it gave us the very template for binary thinking. Sun/moon, day/night, light/dark. It gave us our first units of time beyond a single day, months, weeks. It taught us about cycles, that what disappears can actually come back. It was our very first mirror in the sky. And maybe, most crucially, it acted as a physical anchor, stabilizing the Earth's wobble and creating the stable climate that allowed complex life to even have a chance.
The source talks about this sort of childhood wound, that disappointment you feel when you learn the moon only reflects the sun's light, but this framework flips that completely. Maybe a moon that only reflects, a moon that is a mirror, is actually more profound. It teaches us about recognition. It teaches the pattern of death and return. It teaches us how to see ourselves by seeing what reflects us.
And that's really the key here. This whole system of thought, this equation, it isn't being presented as some new religion you have to believe in or defend. It's being offered as a different lens, a new way of organizing everything that we already see.
And so that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. It's not about whether this framework is true in some dry, materialist sense. It's about coherence and meaning and perception. After seeing it this way, can you look up at the moon again and not see the teacher? Can you see that impossible synchronicity in the sky and not wonder about the recognition it represents? That's the question we're left to think about.